to Maryland Construction Diecast. Today we're taking a look at a Caterpillar D10T Series 2 bulldozer. This was made by CCM and it's in 1/24 scale. Now this thing is fantastic. CCM just nailed it with this. Like the rest of their 1/24 scale models, they look great. They're just enormous. They have great details. Just overall they're fantastic models. These are the kind of things that when they're sitting out, you can look at them probably 20 different times and you're going to find something new, some new detail that you hadn't noticed before every time. They're just fantastic. This is one of my favorite models in my collection, not only because it just looks great, it displays well, it's awesome, but I also have a bit of a personal connection to it as well. But we'll get into that later. Now, these coal blades are 22 feet wide and 8 feet tall, and you can see just how much bigger they are compared to the rest of the dozer. And there's a good reason for that. Coal typically has a much lower weight per volume than a lot of other materials. So you can push so much more coal with this blade than you could a standard blade and still be able to move it efficiently. Now, the flip side is, if you were to take this dozer and put it in dirt, it's not going to do great. It'll still, you can still fill up the blade and push dirt with it, but to be honest, the blades are kind of heavy for the front of the dozer, and you're going to work that thing to death, pushing dirt with this blade. Not that it won't do it, but it's just not going to be very efficient. That's why this is really purpose-built for coal stockpile operations. Now, along with the blade, you also have the counterweight back here. These dozers don't have rippers just because with coal being generally a soft material, you don't need a ripper. These are meant for stockpiling coal, so you're never going to pack coal hard enough to ever need a ripper. But that being said, these blades are heavy enough that you really do need the counterweight on the back to keep the dozer balanced. The place that I was at, we had two older D9L dozers that they had these blades, but they didn't have the counterweights. Now, one of them had a drawbar and the other one had a winch on the back, and it was a night and day difference between the two. Just having the winch with a little bit of extra weight made that dozer so much more balanced than the other one. I mean, you could still run it, but it was so... It was just trickier because you were nose heavy all the time. And when you got into a soft spot, it made everything just that much more difficult. So the counterweights make a huge difference. Absolutely. Now this does have twin tilting cylinders on both sides of the blade. And that is a little unusual. Most of the dozers that I run, you'd have a fixed bracket over here. Well, maybe not fixed. You could adjust it, but generally speaking, you would adjust it to where you could get the angle that you wanted, and it would stay fixed for, I don't know, the life of the dozer. It's not something you really adjust more than once. Once you get the dozer set up, it's going to stay that way. And you'd have your hydraulic tilting cylinder over here on this side. So it's kind of interesting that it has both. On dozers, I don't really think it adds very much. To me, I don't think changing the pitch of your blade is really going to do a lot for you. Now, on a rubber tire dozer, that's an entirely different story. It's very helpful, especially when you start getting down, like if you're on concrete, it makes a big difference. But on the dozer, I don't really see it as necessary. But it's kind of interesting that it's on the model here. Now this thing is heavy. It weighs a metric ton, but it does have a lot of plastic that's used for the detailing, and that really doesn't bother me. A lot of guys get all bent out of shape over how much plastic is used in these diecast models, but to me, as long as it adds to the model and it doesn't take away, it matches and all that, then I'm all for it. Yeah, it just makes for a better model, and to be honest, it keeps it kind of affordable too. If you really want this stuff to be all in metal, you got to look at the brass dozers from CCM. And the last time I looked, the brass D11R was like $8,000. So I'm not interested in spending that kind of money. I'll take the plastic, thank you. So the detailing and everything is really pretty good. The handrails are great. The hydraulic hoses, all the bolt heads are just fantastic. The mesh here on these hood panels is great. The hood panels do open up, and you can get a look at that 12-cylinder motor inside there. These motors are, it's actually kind of confusing how Caterpillar rates the motors, because they say like the net horsepower is 600, but when you're working, you actually have like 650, 675 horsepower, and then when you're in reverse, the motor actually puts out 750 horsepower. So, I don't really know how much these motors actually have. I can tell you though, they are awesome. They put out great power, and you can do an awful lot of work with these things. And it's basically, it's almost like you have two independent six-cylinder motors with a common crankshaft. You know, you have two turbos, two air breathers, two exhaust stacks. You almost have two injector pumps, to be honest. And it's just really cool. It's very well done. You can see there's years and years and years of engineering that went into these motors. Now the cab doors do open up, which is pretty cool. And you can get a good look inside the cab there. It's really hard to see anything, but I can tell you everything is in there that should be in there, and it's fantastic. CCM just did such a good job. Even the floor mat is right, which is really cool. You have all your wipers and everything that's supposed to be there. What's kind of cool is you have the anti-glare package on the hood, and you have the black blade too, which is whatever. You're just going to wear all the paint off the blade anyway. But having the anti-glare is neat. But to be completely honest, on these 10s, it doesn't matter. I don't even know why these things have front windows right here, because you don't look out at all. Like, there's nothing you can get out of it. You know, pretty much probably 90% of the time you're going to look through this window, you're going to look through this window, you're going to look at the back window. You know, on the dozers that have the GPS added, the GPS screen actually takes up this front window right here, so it's not possible to look at the front window anyway. So, like I said, it's kind of funny to have the anti-glare hood, considering that you'll never look at that window anyway. It just doesn't matter. Now, on the smaller dozers, yeah, it is nice, especially, you know, if you're out there in the sunshine all day long, but on this, it doesn't matter. Now you'll notice that this dozer has every possible handrail and walkway grading that you could possibly put on this dozer. It even has a nifty little access ladder that comes down, so you can just climb right up to the platform and get up it that way, so you don't have to climb up the blade and walk up the tracks and, you know, stumble your way up into the cab. Now on the Series 2 dozers, they started adding this, and it's not so much for safety or operator comfort, but it's to meet up with mining regulations. Worldwide, I don't know what the standard is, but in the United States for MSHA, anything over 4 foot, you have to have fall protection. And that includes climbing on or working on or servicing equipment. So technically, according to their rules, to put fuel in the dozer right here, you have to have fall protection if you don't have this walkway and all these handrails and everything. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of the bigger dozers have this now, is to get around that, so you don't have to have fall protection every time you get on and off the dozer. And it's just kind of interesting. It's not a bad idea, but it's just kind of interesting to see it, because it does look kind of goofy. Now, if you take a look at the sprockets here, there's something I want to point out that's really cool. So it's a nice piece here with a lot of detail, but if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see that one of these bolt heads is a little bit different. You have these two sides right here, and the reason for that is when you want to change out the oil in your final drives, you drive the dozer forwards or backwards until this bolt is down here at the bottom, because when you take it out, it drains the final drives. And then right here is your filler plug to put the oil back in. And it's just awesome that that is on this dozer. I mean, you can see how small that detail is to have that right there, but it's on the dozer, and it's a really cool thing to have that. Yeah, it's that attention to detail. I'm going to say it 1,000 times. That attention to detail is just something that I really appreciate on these dozers. So over here on the counterweight, you have a pair of like fast fill valves. One goes to the fuel tank. I'm not really sure what this was. On the D10Ts that I run, we didn't have these. I don't know if it was an option then, or if it was something they added for the Series 2, but it's pretty cool. These fuel tanks take about 300 gallons, and if you're just steady pushing all day long, in 8 hours you can burn at least 100 gallons. In 16 hours, again, if you're steady just steady getting it and just pushing all day long for 16 hours, you'll burn about 250 gallons. So it can take a while to fill up these tanks. And it's kind of cool to be able to do it from the ground. That goes back to, having all this handrails and stuff up there, because you can't, like, if you're on a mine site, you can't fill up the fuel tank without fall protection, at least not anymore. So that's kind of interesting. Something else I want to point out is that you can clearly see on all these dozers that they have LED lights here, which is pretty cool. Now, if you've ever gone from using the old halogen style to the LED lamps, it is night and day, literally, like, especially at night. Like, there is no comparison. Just the amount of light that the LEDs put out is phenomenal, and it makes it almost miserable when you go back to the older style of halogen. Like, it's night and day. Something else that's cool too is the mirrors that are up here on the blade cylinders. They actually do work, and it's pretty cool. Now, to be honest, we had one dozer that had these mirrors, and I never really used them just because they get dirty so easily, and then you really can't see out of them very well. And if you don't want to clear them off like 5 or 10 times a day, then you just don't use them. But it's cool that they're on the model, though. Now, the engine panel does open up on this side too, and you get a good look in there. The door opens up on this side, and you can get a pretty good look at some of the warning labels up there. And you can see all the warning labels inside the cab too that are supposed to be there, and it's just fantastic. There's not enough nice things you can say about these dozers. Now, one of the things that is kind of interesting, we would actually take off all the top carry rollers off of our dozers, and the reason for that is the coal typically would be kept wet all the time, so you'd always have just an enormous buildup of coal in here. And what would happen is, within an hour or two, you're going to get so much built up in here that this is going to get bound up and eventually stop turning. So eventually, you're just going to have metal on metal grinding right here. So they would actually take off all these carry rollers when they would get the dozers. So now here's another detail that I actually love. You see this one grouser pad right here has this notch taken out of it, and there's a reason for that, the same way that this is solid down here. What you can't see is that this is the master link. If you want to break the tracks apart, there's a special link right here that has bolts run in it that you can take out, and you can split the tracks that way. And the easiest way to find the master link is because it's the grouser that has the notches taken out of it. And it's really cool that they included that on this dozer, this model. It just speaks to the level of detail that CCM tries to put into these machines, and I love it. Now, it's hard to see, but there is a fan in here, and you can kind of see it through the louvers on the front of the dozer here. And you can also get an idea of just how small this front window is, and why I say that the anti-glare really doesn't matter, because the window is so small and the dozer is so tall that you really don't use it. And that's why they put the GPS screens right there anyway, because it's kind of a pointless window, to be honest. But here you can also see you got the LED lights, and you actually have two different styles of lights, which is pretty neat. Now, this is one of my favorite models that I have in my collection, not only because it displays great and looks great and it's just fantastic quality, but because I have a personal connection to the real machine as well. Now, I never run a Series 2 D10T, but Series 1, I got a lot of time in. The place that I was at, I left there about 5 years ago, and 5 years ago, the oldest D10T that they had was looking at about 23,000 hours, and it was on its second motor, and the thing was still just a beast. It run great, it would push like nobody else, and it says a lot about the quality of these big dozers. They're just built differently. 23,000 hours on a dozer is like the equivalent of 600,000 miles in your car for the abuse that they take, and they just keep going. That job was a lot of fun. It could also be a nightmare as well. It just wasn't, the hours weren't a good fit for family life. It is what it is. But like my schedule, a lot of times, I would come in at 3 p.m. and basically push coal in the dozer until 7 a.m. the next morning, or I would come in at 11 o'clock at night and push until 3 p.m. the next day. And it wasn't terrible, but there's some parts I miss, some parts I don't. But there's a lot of good stories that come out of that, especially just, these dozers run 24 hours a day, and the people in them can run 24 hours a day as well. It's not very often, but it does happen. And I've seen a lot of fun things. I've seen dozers that have been buried up to the door in coal mud. Coal mud is different. It's hard to explain. Pushing coal is a lot like pushing marshmallow fluff. If it's been packed and it's been run over a couple times, then it's not so bad. You can do whatever you want with it. But if it hasn't been packed, it is so easy to just slide sideways right off the side of the stockpile. It's easy to bury the dozer. It's easy to get hung up. I've seen these blades get holes punched in them trying to push dozers out. Trying to get one of these things unstuck can be quite a challenge. They are very heavy. And like I said, it's been pretty fun doing that kind of stuff. It was unique. But yeah, it was a good experience. And I think I got a lot out of it. Anyway, that's about all I got for this. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. If there's something you'd like to see, let me know. I might just have it. If you'd like to see more of what I do have coming up, please subscribe to Maryland Construction Diecast. I try to put out a new video every Saturday, and I'm going to start doing live videos here, probably Saturday or Sunday nights. I haven't decided yet, so stay tuned for that. And as always, thanks for watching.